morning YouTube, lovely Monday morning today. It is 7 AM and I have just been to the tip to drop last week's green waste off and to pick up 2 tons of soil for a job that I will get you some footage on in a little while. Last week we dug some garage bases out for a local council in a park that we maintain and broke the ground up, and this week we're going to put in estimated 10 to 12 tons of soil, level it off, put the seed down while it's still warm and it will still germinate, and by the end of the season, well, in a couple of weeks, if we get a bit of rain, it will come through and we might even manage to get a first cut on it, depending how long the good weather keeps up. So I shall get you some footage of that job today. But what I want to talk about is I've been doing the videos for a good few months now and people keep asking me about my background. Do I cut grass? Have I just started to cut grass? And the answer is I've been in the trade for 25 years. Started off as an apprentice with a company and worked for that company for 11 years, right the way from apprentice to landscape operative, team leader through to contract supervisor. Unfortunately, due to the climate at the time, the company also was a development company, and although they were one of the 2 largest landscape companies in the northeast of England, they went out of business due to buying a lot of property at a certain time when the recession hit in the mid 2000s. It actually sunk them overnight and took they had 2 or 3 companies at the time, and although the landscape company was profitable, turning over sort of £1 million, it was all the companies were sunk. So I was pretty much out of work a week before Christmas, and being a contract supervisor, I had quite a few contacts in the trade, quite a few contracts for sites we maintained. The first port of call was to ring around a lot of businesses that we worked for who knew me, and one of those was Balfour Beatty Civil Engineering, and my first job I actually won for the company was a £60,000 plant job. I won this because we were already on this job and it was part of a £250,000 job for HMRC in Longbenton in Newcastle. So the remainder of the work was my first job, and basically in a week's trade you've got an order for £60,000 when you've just set off. Balfour Beatty wouldn't give work out like that to a one-man band usually, but we had a good relationship, and the quantity surveyor jumped through a lot of hoops with the people above him to say that he trusted me. He knew, well, I had a bit of finance in place thanks to my dad at the time, who said he would back me, because the problem with working for these companies is, which I didn't know until I spoke to him, was I would have to put up with anything I spent. I wouldn't get back for 90 days. So basically, I arrived at the site, I bought plants from a supplier which I managed to get on 30 days because it was the same again. J. Jones in Southport in Liverpool trusted me to fulfil payment once they gave me a first order, because it's the same again, you have relationships with people. So they were good to me in the early days, and due to that, the plants arrived. I needed to get the plants in as fast as possible, because from signing that work off, it's 90 days from completion. So I spent 2 weeks, pretty much 7 days a week on that job, clashing plants in, putting seed down, just to get my first bill in. Once that first bill went in, like I say, from that day, it was 90 days. So in the meantime, I'd spoke to a lot of people who we had contracts with, not so much for the grass cutting because this was Christmas time, but for the winter maintenance. There were still trees to prune, there was still shrub beds to do, things. So the plan was to contact as many as possible, and quite a few came back and said yes, you could pick up where you left off, continue on the sites, and some of them customers I've still got to this day. So they've been very, very good to me, to be honest. They've been with me for over sort of heading on for 15 years, which is good, and I think we've providing them businesses stay afloat and nothing happens with this current recession, which we're going to have soon, I think I'll have them forever, which is good, because they tend just to give me a purchase order number every year, which not all businesses do. Some have to try and cut costs, but the ones I've got, same again, build up relationships with, and they reward you by keeping up your work. So that's pretty much how I got set up. And on the back of Alpha Beatty, they kept, at the time, Alpha Beatty were big in the northeast, they were getting lots of work. They kept giving me work, did a few railway stations, spraying railway lines and things on the night shift. And like I said, I got a lot of money out of them for the first 2 or 3 years. As anybody will know though, 90-day payments aren't great. It wasn't something, it was a stopgap more than anything. It was something that I didn't want to do forever, because the third job I did for Alpha Beatty, I needed to finance some big trees, and I needed to finance £55,000 worth of product. Now, it's the same again, that was to pay for 30 days, and I didn't get it for 90. The good thing was the client, well, Alpha Beatty at the time, the QS, managed to jump through a few hoops and get me the materials paid for a bit quicker, so it was just the labour I was sitting on. And I was fairly confident that a company like Alpha Beatty weren't going to go bust on me, although you never know. So Carillion, they were a big company, but they went bust. So the job went, it worked out. Defects, obviously, I put in with the price, because the trees are so expensive. You're praying that you don't lose any, but you are putting in a 5% on the basis that on plant jobs you do lose a certain percentage, which I knew of from previous. So I put a set price in, and luckily we never lost one of the big trees, so it was a bit of a bonus when, because they were £4,000 each, the trees, the root balled imported trees, because there was so much money, it meant that it was a bit of a bonus when I never lost them after the defect period. It meant that was extra money in the pot. So, and come the March of the next year, 3 months of trading, obviously I had my 12 clients, but through the winter I'd been knocking on doors, and I'd also been putting in leaflets and brochures, which I'd got produced on the cheap. It was just a really cheap and cheerful brochure, which I might do more about on a separate video about my advertising. But I basically hit every business in certain areas, and it proved quite profitable. And by the March I had 19 commercial customers, but as well as that I had 30 private customers, because I've been leaflet dropping different kind of leaflet, obviously not catered for business, but I've been leaflet dropping villages in my area, and I was building up quite a reputation for good grounds maintenance, because what you find is with private customers, they want you all year, so you could have a little old lady and she'd rather you go once a week for 52 weeks a year rather than just through the winter. So it was a knock-on effect really. I got 1 or 2 clients, and this lady knew this lady, she knew this gentleman, it went from there. So by the June, the middle of the season, I had 60 clients, and I took on my first member of staff, who was a previous, not employee of mine, but one of my workers from my previous company, and we had a really good year one, and that's basically how I started my company off. And here we are, sort of up to 15, well, heading on 15 years later, with a client list of 96 businesses. I was hoping to get to 100 this year, but it's not looking too good. I think when I started the year, we picked up a certain number of clients, and I thought I could get to 100 very easily. But on the other side of it, the turnover that I was predicting this year has actually gone up, which has meant that we could buy a lot more equipment, as you guys have probably seen over the last few months. A lot of the stuff I've tested I've actually bought. So sometimes it's not about client numbers. Some people say, oh, I want 100 clients, I want 500 clients. Sometimes it's about turnover, and sometimes it's about that one site on an industrial estate where the original grass cutting contract is £1,000, say, for instance. It's about approaching that client and saying, can we moss clear your car parks? Can we edge your grass? It's not in the contract. Can we do this? Can we do that? And before you know it, that £1,000 could end up as £2,000 from various little jobs, ad hoc jobs. So, like I said, it's not all about client numbers all the time. It's about getting extra works out of clients. And then on the other side of it, some clients come to you. They might have had a good year in business, and they might say, "Oh, we want to smart the front of the office up. Can you do something with £500?" And you go away and price a couple of tubs up, a few plants, and put your labour cost in. And that's the same again. That's bringing you extra income. So there's lots of ways that one customer can get you so much more money, especially in the commercial sector. But the private sector speaks for itself. You go to a customer, and if they're sort of high-end customers, people who are retired or something, or working long hours and making good money, they tend to want to come home and sit in the garden on a weekend. So they want a nice garden. So it's the same again. I might go from starting to grass a hood to putting in bed plants, putting in trees and things. Before you know it, that small grass cutting job that might be £20 a week turned into £40 or £50 a week when you work it out over the year. So there's lots of ways to go from when you get a small job. It's not thinking, oh, well, that's only worth £500 a year. It's adding the bits on and making it worth more money. So that's pretty much how I set off, worked the way through the NVQs in horticulture, and how things differ. Back in the day, we would go into a nursery and we would have to identify sort of 20 or 30 trees, and we would have to identify 60, 70, 80 shrubs. And what I'm finding is, I've had a couple of apprentices over the last decade, and what I'm finding is they're coming to me and they're learning sort of 3 or 4 shrubs in college, and they know 1 or 2 trees, and this is stuff that we used to go out for a day and we would just be bombarded with plants and trees and shrubs, and we would have to know them, and that was part of the NVQ. You had to name so many, and then you had to say how you would identify a tree. So Fraxinus excelsior, but you would also have to know that it was an ash tree, so Latin and normal names, and you would say, oh, well, the black alternate opposite buds, and you would have to know that. But you wouldn't just have to know that, you'd have to know another 19. And I think the NVQs and the qualifications now in horticulture, unless you go up to something like a degree level, I don't think they're worth the paper they're written on anymore, to be honest. Because even you get guys who, they'll come to you, they've done a couple of years of horticulture and they've got an NVQ, and you might send them to pick a plant up and they wouldn't know it from another plant. You'd tell them the name and they'd bring 2 back. Which one? Well, you've done your course and you've been out working for a company for a couple of years and you don't know these answers. So I just think that years ago it was better, and just now it's I don't know if this is the same in all trades, but they just seem to be very easy to pick up as well. I think it took me 2 years to do my first one, whereas now I believe you can do it in about 8 or 9 months. I think they just rush people through courses just to get. I think a lot of these training providers, they just want the money in, and the quicker they get you through the course, the quicker they get the money. So I think that's another part of it. So that's pretty much, like I say, how I got into the trade and how I set off. Yes, there was a bit of luck, I believe, because I could have gone to Balfour Beatty on that day, and the manager could have gone to his managers and they could have said, we're not willing to take a risk on a job. I think the job that they were talking about was in the millions, probably tens of millions. It was a brand new DSS building for the whole of the North East. So if my little plant scheme affected their practical completion, then it could have gone tits up, for a better words. So they could have said no. How it would have gone from there probably wouldn't have expanded as fast, because I wouldn't have had that capital that I was getting off the bigger job. I mean, at the time you're putting a plant in the ground, you're getting £1 a plant. So you're paying £3 because you're buying these plants obviously in thousands at a time, but you're getting £1 a plant. And then on landscape and on commercial stuff, everybody knows that you can easily put in 60 or 70 plants an hour. So figure it out for yourself. There is good money in planting schemes, and hedging's even better. I mean, you can get 50 pence a plant for putting hedging in back in the day, and you can put a lot of hedging in a day. So there was good money to be made, and if that hadn't happened, like I say, I don't know. It's like I say, nobody knows, but these things happen sometimes for a reason. But here I am 15 years on. So anyway, I'm just arriving at the job, so stay tuned, and I shall, once I get the site opened up, I shall run you through what the plan is for today. So here we are. This was the area. It had a lot of weeds coming through, and it was also, as you can see, bits of shed bases which we've broken up. There are some stones still underneath, but they'd be buried well with the soil. We've broken up the bulk of the bases, and that's our first load, which is going to go in. And we've also got these mats here, which I'll show you in a minute what the plan is with those. So we don't really want any punches, so we put these track mats down just to drive across the rough area in case there's any sharp objects or anything. It means we don't have to barrow soil all the way back there. So this is the first load getting tipped in, guys. There's roughly 2 ton on the back of the vehicle, and in total for this job I ended up going to the soil supplier 6 times. So a total of roughly 12 ton went into the area. Once I levelled the area down, as you can see, I'm doing our rain dance, which is just compacting the areas prior to raking. It just gets rid of any lumps and bumps before you do the rake over, to get rid of any hollows. And then it's onto the raking. Now the plan with it is, today, as you can see, it was 24 degrees today, so the plan is to rake it over somewhere near, and we haven't got any rain forecast this week, so the plan is to let it settle down a bit and come back next week, give it a final rake, and any lumps and bumps that's still there will have broken down by then, and we'll come back, give it a final rake, and we'll get the seed put on, and it should still be good enough. If we can get it on the night before some rain, it should still be good enough to come through this year, hopefully. You can see there's quite a few bits of weed and stuff. Basically this has come from a huge soil pile, and as the driver's dug in, there's been some sort of crops growing on the top and things, but it's the same again. We can pull these out now. Any ones that's still dead on the surface, when we come back next week, we can pull them out, as well as any stones. From time to time with areas like this, you'll come back a week later and there'll be 1 or 2 stones popped up on the area. So, but like I said, today's about getting this 90% ready. I mean, we could have probably put the seed on, but I'd prefer, rather than wasting a bag of £60 grass seed for the bird seed, I'd prefer just to know that the weather's going to change next week, and at least we will only be doing it once rather than having to come back. So, like I said previous, this was garage bases that had, basically the garages were knocked down years ago. The bases were shot to bits, they were all cracked, so we took that off. We've left hardcore and stuff still underground, as you'll know, which is good for drainage. It was a bit of a cheap and cheerful job for the council. It's just an area in a corner, so it's nothing. It doesn't need to be nothing flash. But like I say, we still want it level, because we're going to be cutting this area for the next 3 years minimum. At the moment is how long we're here for. Hopefully that'll last longer. We'll be here a lot longer than that. But like I say, we want it as nice as possible to make our jobs easier. So there is a little bit of stone coming off, which we rake off and obviously take off site and get rid of. As you can see, just dragging a bit to the edge there. But apart from that, with it being, I mean, this soil has been through a screen, although it's been stood on a pile to accumulate weeds for a number of months. It has been screened, so there should be very little in the form of weeds in it, stones, sorry, in it. As you can see down this front edge, there is a timber edge where the grass was existing. So what we're going to do when we come back next week to seed, we're just going to put a timber board along, and what that'll do is just act as a restraint, and it'll just match the rest of the area. So we'll drag the soil in once the timber board's in place, and that will finish all of that off. The reason we're still putting seed down in September is because the ground's still warm, and like I say, with the change in weather, it is an ideal time at the end of the season to get it down. And as I said previous, we may get a cut, if depending how long the season lasts, we may get a cut on it. So like I say, that's the finished product. We will be coming back to rake over it again. The bits of grass you can see here are where we've blended it into the existing. So, but we will rake over it again, and by the time it settles next week, that's all it'll need, just a very light rake over, and then the seed put on. So thanks for watching the video, guys. Please like and subscribe if you're not already doing so, and I will catch you on the next one. Have a good day, guys.